Strive and Thrive is a collection of discussions featuring guests from various fields, focused on guiding entrepreneurs in creating businesses that excel in every aspect: people, planet, and profit. Throughout the series, you can join us, Romesh and Mike, as we explore relevant topics with our guests which can help businesses thrive.
Romesh and I met while I was supporting a client transforming their business. And I needed finance director support and reached out to him and his team. Since then, we've become good friends who share a passion for business and entrepreneurship. If you like today's discussion, then you want to subscribe to our YouTube and Spotify channels. Hi everyone, and welcome to our latest episode of Strive and Thrive. Welcome, Alex. Nice to have you on board.
Thank you very much for inviting me on, Mike. It's great to see you, and great to see you, Romesh, as well.
Welcome, Alex.
Brilliant. So, Alex is the founder of Airside Labs, a startup in the aviation industry, and we'll get to touch on interesting topics today around AI, aviation, and all the other broader interesting areas that Alex has experience in. He's previously worked at large corporates and also was a major player in Snowflake software, which is where I first met him. Today we'll touch on Alex's experience as a founder, entrepreneur, and a podcaster himself, so you can critique us, Alex, as part of this experience. And I'm really looking forward to this one. So Alex, can you give us the audience a quick overview of your career to date and what's brought you to Airside Labs and now Strive and Thrive?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, will do. And I will keep it fairly brief. I started out at university, so I did astrophysics at uni. And it was actually during that course that I actually managed to secure a 10-week summer placement at BAE Systems. Which really changed my life. I did that placement, learned how to be in an office and sort of do basic software coding. I finished university and then went back and they hired me, which was fantastic. I was there for 9 years, so big corporation in the defense industry as a software systems engineer. Then I jumped out of the big corporate life and joined a small company called Snowflake Software, and helped them pivot what they had from one market into aviation, helped grow that company all the way through the sort of journey of growth and load of challenges and stories, which hopefully we'll have time to get into along the way, through to exit. So that business was acquired by Relics PLC, and what we did was integrate with the aviation part of that company called Cirium. I was there for 4 years, running R&D innovation and looking at how to apply AI to aviation data products. And then after a summer off, after leaving there, I've decided to go again, and started up Airside Labs just about a year ago now. Looking at AI in aviation, and also have the podcast going called the Travel Tech Podcast. So quite a few different things in the last few years. But very exciting.
Wow, Alex! Yeah, you've been up to lots of things in your career. So tell us about Airside Labs. So this is a business that you've set up yourself. Tell us what it's doing and what excites you about it.
I'm a solopreneur at Airside, so it is just me plus my AI supporting agents and tools, and some contacts and associates as well. But we're focused on AI in aviation and validating the use of AI for aviation use cases. So trying to really understand, is that system really working? How do you test it properly? Through my whole career, I've been working on validation, verification of systems, either safety critical or business critical. I thought that validation of AI was perhaps a part of the story that was missing. So with Airside Labs, are sort of set up to help companies build AI systems, but then also test them properly, so you actually know what they're going to do, and can validate them for the aviation market.
Okay. And how have you found, actually being your own boss, running your own business? Yes, you're a solopreneur, but you're working in collaboration with other people. What's that been like?
I think it's different, that's for sure, than working both or either in a small startup. At Snowflake, when I walked in, we had 20 people. At BAE, there was at that time 100,000. Relex is certainly in the thousands. So different scales down to solo. But I love it. I love the freedom and the ability to pivot quickly, respond to things very quickly. I certainly appreciate that. That's very different. But then it's still hard. I mean, it's hard work. And I think working alone, it does open up that sort of, I like to go and work with other humans every now and again as well. So going to events, and I do a lot of volunteering with the IETs, the Institute of Engineering and Technology, in London. And so there's lots of communities to link up with, both entrepreneurial side, but also engineering side. That's important.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Cause, I've got similar, well, in fact, I know Mike does as well. We've got the corporate experience. We've then worked at, different size organizations before finally setting off on our own. And I suppose I started off as a solopreneur before kind of, expanding the business. And it's definitely a lonely place, isn't it, at the beginning? And you kind of have to adjust to that. There are the wins, I think. I love what you said. You can pivot easily, which means that you're being able to follow your instincts and your views quickly without being, I suppose, pushed back by anyone else, which is quite liberating. Would you say that's the case?
I'd say liberating. I'd start. One word you mentioned there was lonely. I think that maybe that's an important topic to spend a bit of time on. Yes, it is quite lonely. So you definitely have to be a self-starter to be a solo. I think even in a big corporate, if you are in leadership, it's still lonely at the top, because you're not always in a position to share your inner thoughts with your leadership team, because everyone has sort of perhaps those internal doubts and challenges that you sort of work through. So it can be just as lonely in a big corporation as a solo, but I think there's definitely a bond, meeting other solopreneurs, but also founders and other leaders. There's definitely a kind of camaraderie between people at the same level in different companies. You can kind of share some of those stories and have a bit of community there, so it's not quite so lonely.
You're all in it together. You're taking the same kind of risks, aren't you? I suppose ultimately. Do you feel the burden of it sometimes?
The burden. Do I feel the burden? Well, yes and no. Yes and no. I think it's also very, very rewarding when you deliver something to a customer. They pay you. You see the money arrive in the bank account. I think I wouldn't see it as a burden. I in some ways there is a bit of a grind, but I think when you're doing work and building a company, seeing this thing you've created grow, improve, and change, get better over time, there's such a high sort of degree of satisfaction in seeing that over time. I think that it's like, what's more enjoyable isn't the end point, it's the journey you've been on to get to that end point. So it's like enjoying the building rather than enjoying an outcome.
Yeah, and I suppose it tastes sweeter because you built it. It's been your baby. It's what you've done.
Oh yeah, 100%. And maybe that's one of the differences between working in a big corporation and being in a small business or startup, is that in a big corporation, there's a big safety net. There's hundreds of roles around you. Deadlines are still important, but it's a very different kind of culture. If you're a solopreneur and you don't cut the invoice, you're not going to get paid. No one's going to chase you. If you don't do it, there's no one else who's going to do it. So there's an edge and a taking a responsibility and ownership thing that's radically different as a solo and in a startup that I really enjoy.
I think you've described the some real positives there, which I totally identify with. And Mike, you've been on that journey as well. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to Alex's comment about loneliness. I think when I set up, I found finding your own motivation is one of the challenges. When you're in a corporate, somehow you've got a motivation that's community led almost from an organizational perspective, and it's ongoing and it's enduring. When you're on your own, you can take your dog for a 2-hour walk in the afternoon if you want to, or you can sit at your desk and stare at things and trawl LinkedIn and do things that are maybe not always productive, or some things that are incredibly interesting and creative. And I think that opportunity is there. And I think I think you said the word discipline as well. You've got to home in the discipline and motivation as well to keep the business moving, because there is that worry of a payday. That's the fear, but there's also an opportunity of exploration as and when you want it. I think for me, one of the things I've most enjoy around working in Easel and what I do and what I've set up is I can be creative and explore myself, but that's why I enjoy it so much. And I think you're saying that as well, Alex. What are some of the things that you've found that have motivated you to keep exploring and keep doing things while you're being a solopreneur?
Well, after I jumped out of Rolex, it was a great experience, and there's a great team there, and I really enjoyed my time working at Cirium. After I left, it took me a while to decompress, actually, because we sold the business, Snowflake Software Limited, and we signed the deal the 9th of March 2020, just as the pandemic was sort of, the impact of it was rolling across the world. And we signed the deal on the Friday and shut the office on the following Tuesday, and then didn't see anyone other than on a video call for 18 months. So that it took me a while to decompress, because I think there was still sort of part of that was impacting even after those 4 years. And I tried all sorts of stuff. I was interested in making cheesecakes and doing a luxury cake delivery business. I was making wooden coasters and straightening hazel sticks for walking sticks and trying all those kind of fun things. But what I learned about myself after I decompressed, which didn't take that long, it was a few months. If you leave me alone long enough, I end up back at the computer, and then I end up coding, and then I end up working with AI tools. Before you know it, I've created a new business. I'm pitching clients and back doing very similar thing. It's like I had a timeout of other random stuff like the cakes or the coasters. Some very nice yew wood, stained, beautiful. But yeah, I was back behind the computer coding in no time. And then I love aviation, so I ended up straight back in to a very similar area.
Do you think the exploration in cheesecake building and coasters gave you that, which I love, by the way? Do you think that gave you? Do you think that helped inspire you to end up back where you are? So, although it pulled you back, as you said, it made you realise what you really like doing and where you really like, where your strengths are and where the best opportunities are for you.
Yes, the serious answer is, yeah, it helped me rediscover what I'm good at, which is data, AI, software, sales, business stuff. But I think the slightly lighter tone is, I think you could do if you're enthusiastic about something, you can kind of do anything for 3 months or 6 months. Like you could do any role for 3 months, 6 months, but it's the discipline and something that actually works well with who you are as a person, that you can keep going and that is actually sustainable. So I kind of figured out that there's a luxury Basque cheesecake delivery business in and around the Chichester area. Whilst it may have worked for a little while, wasn't really my area to pursue long term.
What a lovely kind of different path you took there. But what you've done there, I think, Alex, is you use the word reset. It's refreshing, isn't it? It's just getting away from because I'm sure you described your journey at a high level at the beginning, all really intense, right? And I bet you were tired, I bet you were drained, and you just needed to find that time to recharge the batteries again. I've been through that myself, and I think that's important, isn't it? You've got to work sustainably over time, and that's part of the process, I think. So yeah, that's interesting. But something there that made me smile, that that you said was you knew you'd get back into doing the coding or your main area, and I've seen that a lot. I've seen that a lot with entrepreneurs, with self-starters, another term that we've used today, where actually people get to a point, they've achieved their goal. It might be selling a business, it might be taking a step back, but they always after a break come back in to do something, because they've just got it in them. And it always makes me smile when I hear a business owner go, sold the business now, I'm just going to take it easy, because then
Romesh, I've got to ask you this: have you got any cheesecake and coaster stories?
I don't.
Yeah. You've not taken your time out to build something completely different just to reset?
No. I mean, I when I went through my period of resetting, I took kind of 6 months after I left my last full-time role. I was a CFO in a very fast-growing business. It was a brilliant experience, and I've been there for a long time. But I was really tired. I was knackered, and it was just going to get busier. I need to take a step back, and actually, it was brilliant. And I explored passions, which is what Alex, I think, did with the cheesecake example. I went traveling. My wife's a teacher, so I kind of left my that role in the summer. So we utilized that time well. The Trans-Siberian Railway went overland from Helsinki to Beijing, which was very nice. But
Amazing.
Different experiences, different scenarios, and I think just got me away and helped me recharge. And then when I got back, I was ready, and started to explore next steps with a bit of vigor, I suppose. But so cheesecakes, swap that with traveling. but I think the point is that you do get back into it. You can't help yourself really. I think it's something that entrepreneurs, self-starters, we've all got it in us. Mike, what's your cheesecake story?
I was thinking about this as you're answering. I thought, what would mine be? But I spent time. I do quite a lot of studying, so I spent quite a lot of time studying into different philosophies and theories and things like that. But one of the more crazy ideas I had was I looked at buying a football team. So I wrote the business case, looked at the proposal, kind of considered setting it up and working out what it would look like. Only a really small one, nothing huge, but just and I think you need to do those kind of exercises, but then it does ground you in what you're really good at and where you will end up. And I think I do think. Go on, Alex.
I was going to say, you're looking for investors. Count me in, man. I'd love it.
Yeah, it's funny the amount of friends
Let's
I've had
do
who've gone, are you serious? Let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah, you could have been the new Ryan Reynolds, right?
Oh, God.
That would have been awesome, Mike. Yeah, I had no idea.
That would be awesome.
Considered that. Yeah.
So I wrote the business case. I did all the proposals. I really enjoyed that whole exercise, but I was like, I'm not sure this is Mike yet. And so I said, right, carry on.
Yeah, okay. You haven't written it off
yet.
Let's revisit that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So one of the things we've just all been talking about, but on our journeys to setting up businesses, is that community, having some peers to talk to support. I think Alex, you said, you mentioned some groups of people that you that you value on that journey. Community is really important, isn't it? Going back to the lonely place kind of piece. Alex, what are the most valuable communities for you?
I think for me, so I'm 46. As I mentioned at the beginning of my intro, I've had a few phases of my career. 9 years at BAE, and then at Snowflake. That was, well, when the CEO hired me, he said, "Oh yeah, we'll grow the business. 3 years, we'll exit. It'll be incredible." Turned out to be, and it was incredible, and we did exit, but it was 8 years and not 3. But I'm not holding that against him at all. So it's 9 plus 8, and then Sirium's 4. So there are different communities that I've connected with through that path, and so there's definitely like a previous customers and colleagues type network that I can lean upon. So I'd say the number one community has been those previous customers, colleagues, suppliers, people you've worked with, people I've worked with over the years, and you've learned to trust them, and you've earned their trust through delivering a project to them, or perhaps they've done that for you, and you've really just got to know them. And so I think there's like this network which I rely on very much, and that's really important to me, because I think particularly aviation defense industry, you sort of, once you're in it, you're in the market. I've got a pet theory that most certainly business to business markets, there's probably a couple of thousand people really in it, in each one, and if you're in there, they get to know you. And it's not that many people in terms of a scale. So that's one sort of main community. But I think other founders now, because this is my first time as a pure founder, Airside Labs, because I joined Snowflake. I was hired in. And then there's a story about me scraping together every penny I had to get as many shares as I could at the right moment. We might have time for that story. But the community of founders and other people going through the same thing. So more recently, I know many of your viewers and listeners, it's the kind of groups of other founders getting together, helping each other out, saying, where do you start with some of this stuff? How do you find your first customers? Those kind of more community groups of people with their own businesses. I found that really valuable, both to offer advice and help them, but also to listen and ask for help and receive some feedback. So I think that that's a long answer, but there's those two sides. So historic stuff and people I work with, and then new people are in exactly the same position.
Yeah, I like that. And so much of that, I really identify with a lot of those points. Firstly, it takes time to build those relationships and to build that trust, which you talked about, right? And it's when you find those people, they are important because they're a safe space, but they can give you that different lens, that different perspective, which everyone needs a bit of holding to account, right? But you want to be held to account by people you like and you trust and you've got history with. So yeah, I think that's great. And yes, shared experiences, we're all in it together, kind of thing. Yeah, no, I like that. So you took a business going back to Snowflake now, where you said there were 20 people when you joined, and you helped pivot that, didn't you? It was focused on a certain sector. You helped pivot that. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Alex, and maybe your key learnings from that journey of how you help a business really become uber successful?
Well, the history of the company. Ian Painter, Eddie Curtis, it founded Snowflake Software 2001. So when I joined, it had already been going for 10 years, and they've been really successful, super successful in it's geospatial data loading software for geospatial data. So they worked at the Ordnance Survey in Southampton and created something called OS Master Map, which is still the premium mapping product in the UK for vector data for GIS systems. That's as technical as I'll get, by the way. So I'll come back out now. They set that up. They did super well, but I was hired because they'd sort of sold that product to everyone who was going to buy it in that niche. They'd done really, really well, and they just needed a bit of a boost. The revenues that were sort of, I don't want to say flatlining because that implies there was nothing. It was solid, but that market, they'd done perhaps everything they could do in that market, and they couldn't see where the growth where that was going to come from. So I was brought in to help take that solution range of IP and pivot into the aviation market. The big advantage they had was the software products all followed XML. They understood XML schemas incredibly well. And because of a bunch of open standards that had just been published in aviation, it meant that those products could solve the same problem for a whole range of new customers. And I was able to then take my contact list from my time at BA Systems and doing consultancy and R&D within the Ministry of Defence. I was able to take that and say, right, here's the 50 people we need to go and talk to and pitch in the next 6 months. And so that's where it started. What were some of the lessons? I mean, once we got through our first few contracts, I think the lessons, there's so many, Romesh. So I try to tease a few headlines out. I think that if you're grinding through that approach, we did so many things. We were exhibiting at events, we were cold calling, talking to people. I think one of the key lessons was that if you show integrity from the very beginning, then you can actually build that trust very quickly, even in a regulated market. So when we were going to pitch these clients in aviation, we had these examples of projects and things in a track record. But I think what we'd earned through that previous sort of the 10 years before I arrived was a credibility in one market, and then we were able actually to take that across to those new clients who are hyper risk averse. Aviation, obviously safety critical, and so it's hard for anyone in procurement to take a risk on a brand new supplier. So I think one of those key lessons was to show integrity with everything we did as part of that pivot, and even in those early days, the early outreach to new customers, being super reliable, being a great supplier, doing what you say you're going to do.
Okay.
Good practice,
so
right?
Really focusing on the customer and what they wanted, and being, like you say, reliable and trustworthy. Was that the focus?
It had to be super reliable, absolutely, and almost probably more reliable than anyone else. I mean, obviously, the things I'm not saying are that we had fantastic technology. We could show that it was at least 10 times cheaper to use our solution. We had a good product, and we had a good young team. So when I joined, there's a whole host of fantastic software graduates from Southampton University. It's one of the jewels in the crown of the UK is their computer science department. And I know a lot of the very current responsible AI R&D is being done from Southampton. And so that little hub there, when I walked into that room with 19 other people, the whole dev team pretty much was made up of Southampton University fresh graduates, all with 1 or 2 years experience. So you could imagine, I was 34 at the time, walking in and trying to sort of win over that team, earn their trust internally as well, in terms of doing that pivot and then growing that company. So yeah, I think one of those key lessons, being super reliable, assuming that we're innovative and got a great product, there's that spine of credibility that was needed to really earn the trust of NATS, so National Air Traffic Services in Whiteley, Hampshire. If you're delivering into air traffic control and those kind of folks, you need to do what you say you're going to do and hit your deadlines and work really hard and all of those things together.
That makes sense. Thank you. And Mike, you obviously do lots of tenders, to the public sector, and I'm sure are having to emphasize credibility. All the things that Alex has just said. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, it does, and it's one of those really hard things to do, right? There's a lot about having let's assume everyone's got a good product. I think that's what you've got to assume. So what you've got to do is work out how you offer something new and novel in that environment, or how you differentiate. And the truth is, building strong relationships with a good service wins a lot of the time in public sector, large organization, traditional sectors, whether that's defense, healthcare, aviation. And it takes time to build those relationships, and they want to test. If you're new to these sorts of markets, you've got to prove that they can trust you, because they will take the safer option if they can. And I think even if you're cheaper, they'll take the safer option if they are not sure about you as an organization. It's why your point, Alex, your reflection was, I haven't talked about the product, because you've got to have a good product, but you've also got to build that relationship and trust in there that allows them to psychologically switch to a new organization, which is what they've got to do. And it's a risk equation for most large organizations in traditional sector. It's not just a price point based question.
Yeah. I mean, I'd actually extend that to SME businesses as well, though. I think it's equally relevant. Yeah. So guys, come on, tell me specifically, how do you build that trust? You know, Alex talked about, you know, listening and making sure you're uber reliable, you know, going above and beyond. What else can you do?
What most of the time, what I've seen is they offer up quite small. I don't know if this was the case for Snowflake, Alex, but it's quite small opportunity, or SI Labs, in fact, quite small opportunities at first to test you. Little small tests where they might give you a little bit of funding to see if you're the right kind of company. They might invite you to some events. That it's those areas where you're like, well, yeah, but that's not the real opportunity. That is the opportunity, and they're testing you, right? And they're testing you that you can behave in the right way, and that will be a commercial question, it'll be a technology question, it'll be an organizational culture question, and you're just having those small snippets of opportunities. I'm guessing you have the same experience with Airside Labs as well, Alex, in terms of you're new, although they know you, they're still testing you then, and you're a new business, and it's just those small little opportunities you get will lead to bigger things as they're rebuilding up that validation of you as a person or as a business.
Yes. I think the aviation story for Snowflake, it did start. There was a lot of cold calling. I mean, that was one of my mistakes, was trying to get my consultancy team. So we started off. I had one consultant in the team, and I pitched the board, the company board. I wasn't a director at that point. I pitched them, okay, this is how I can turn within a year, go from zero essentially to £1 million per year revenue. And I think they, in hindsight, they were very kind in their review of my business case and my pitch. But we did it. Went from 0 to 1 million. And so I ended up and then hired 8 more. So 10 of us, including me. But it really started because we'd learned these. It goes back to why I was hired, I think, originally into the company, was because I went and presented at a standards conference, aviation standards conference, a very dry topic. I read all of the standard specs on the flight on the way over. It was in Washington, DC, and I was presenting. And I read all the specs on the flight over, did that, met a load of people, came back, and one of the people who I'd met turned out to be Ian Painter, who then ended up hiring me for Snowflake. But the reason we were able to start landing some of those clients was because I knew all of the technical standards and we were working in that area and trying to help move things forward. When we were then cold calling, to just come back to that story, I happened to end up phoning up somebody who was the standards lead at NATS, and from a cold call ended up talking for a couple of hours with this person because I did know what I was talking about. And he invited me to the office to pitch and do a little demo. And that was where it started. And that was the test, Mike. I think, did you actually have a software product? Could you load all of this mapping data into a GIS with one click, parsing all the schemas and dealing with all the complexity, automatically creating all the indexes and spatial referencing systems and deal with all of that stuff. And
can he trust you? And can he trust you to recommend you, right? Because that's what he wanted. He'd proven you were technically capable, but could he prove also he could trust you to be pushed through the organization because he was introducing you?
Yes.
That human touch.
Well, no, exactly. Yes. So they got to know me as much as I sort of got to understand what was going on with that client. And the same thing happened with the business in the Middle East and in Europe and in the US. So very, very similar. And so within a couple of years of starting that pivot, we were exporting systems and software in the FAA, which is the Federal Aviation Administration in the US, to Eurocontrol in Brussels, and the UAE in the Middle East.
Interesting. And what about you, Romesh? How do you build trust in your industry? Yours is it's a regulated environment as well. What's your...
Yeah, well, I think in terms of what we're doing, we are our personalities, our trust is super important because our technical skills, our expertise, our insights, all of that stuff is really critical. But the client needs to know they can work with you on a personal level and that they can trust you, because the finance director, I think, has a unique opportunity to be the right hand of the business leadership, and you've got to be able to build that trust quickly. I think something Alex said was really important. That's listening. It's listening. People are not generally good at listening, and so if you can listen and you can really understand what is causing your client pain, what's keeping them awake at night, what are they really worried about, and that's where I think you can build a safe space. And it takes time, doesn't it? I think building trust takes time, but you've got to be consistent, you've got to be reliable, again, to Alex's point. And just keep I suppose there's an honesty and transparency as well to it, which I think is really important, because ultimately, if we're doing our job well, we have to be able to push back and challenge as well. And you can only do that if someone really does trust you, because otherwise you're gonna, create issues. So I see it as a gradual process of building trust, but really going in, listening, and really seeking to actively understand, proactively kind of drill down. There's different levels of listening, aren't there? There's different levels of understanding, and I think the deeper you go, the more powerful that connection becomes, and people can sense when you're not being genuine or authentic. And I think we're talking, all three of us, about building real authentic relationships, and that's the only way for me that you can build trust.
Just maybe I can build on that, Romesh, because you said something very powerful there. Building on that trust and taking the time and being authentic. I think we did have multiple serious challenges and problems at Snowflake Software, and actually I can go back to BA Systems as well. And it's if you've earned that trust and credibility through a bit of transparency, and being open and listening, and actually thinking about the customer or client or person and learning about their challenges as much as possible, that can carry you through all sorts of tough times. If a project has gone really wrong, or you've made a catastrophic error in terms of the estimates, oh my goodness, these are completely off. We put the bid in, we've done the first phase, and then, oh my goodness, we've actually underestimated this by 10x. What we're going to do? I think many companies would perhaps try and just eat that and hide it and stick to the original plan, whereas that I'm much more of I'm a sort of follower of the approach where you talk to the client, talk to the customer. You've earned that trust, and being a bit open and saying this was a mistake, or this has gone wrong. How can we work together to make sure this is a success? We want it to be a success, and here's our plan to make it better. I think there's something, if you've earned their trust, then when it does get difficult, or there is a mistake, or something terrible happens with a project or something, having that transparency and credibility can help get everybody through that. And that's hard. That's a lesson that's hard learned through experience. A hard one lesson, I think.
Yeah. No, I agree. Brilliant.
Someone told me they'll create credit.
Say that again, Mike.
If you can create credit, someone told me create credit. Always be in positive credit with your customers, with your teams, with what you're doing, so that one day you will need to cash that in. And you'll cash it in at point, to your point then, Alex, they trust you at that point when something goes wrong, because it will. And when it does,
exactly.
You've built enough credit to have a strong enough relationship to go, we're all good. You know we're good, but we need to work out something different here.
And it goes back to the fact that it takes time and it's a process, isn't it?
Correct.
You need the people that you're serving to also buy into that as well. So you can't create that with everyone. They need to be willing and open for it as well. Yeah. Great. Guys, we've got to move on. We've got to cover some other really good topics here. I know we've got some good stuff to talk about. AI. I want to hear you two tell me about AI and what you think the latest developments are and what you guys are seeing. So Alex, why don't you start? That's a really broad question, isn't it? I can see you thinking.
Where do I start? It's I mean, it was partly that was one of the reasons I started Airside Labs, which I did not mention earlier, was the step change in technology around. That's probably I was only really aware of when ChatGPT was released, but that step change was so exciting, so thrilling for me. I just had to act on it. And so I think the underlying premise is that it's sort of so transformational, so different. It is like the internet in terms of scale of change, maybe even more so, actually, probably more. And so that's the underlying premise that I'm excited by it. I think it's incredible. The technology is amazing. What we can do with it has got pros and cons. That there are huge challenges there. With as with any tool, it can be used for both cyber defense and the other cyber attack. There are bad actors out there who use it. So as a tool, it's got obviously both sides of that coin. So what do I think of the latest developments? I think it's transformational. I think that it will radically change the economy. And even though it's been a slow start, I'm in an AI bubble because I'm reading about this stuff, building with it, using it constantly. Even inside my bubble, I can still appreciate the adoption in other parts of the economy are not as fast as perhaps software engineering, but it will transform the many jobs. I think for the better in the long term.
Can you give me some examples, Alex, of how you use it and it's transformed how you work in Airside Labs, where you've got the 10x benefits or whatever that might be? How are you practically using it in Airside Labs?
There's two main areas. One of them is in just software engineering. So using coding agents to create tools, so vibe coding, but much more. But that's sort of the fun side. But then sort of very deep technical testing, data science projects, and learning and retraining. So one of the things I've done in the last 2 years is kind of knock the rust off my software engineering skills that I learned in the first part of my career. And I've sort of re-engaged, and the AI tools have helped me learn and resharpen my skills in that whole area. So I can now fully deliver software projects and data science projects with confidence.
So
both part of the business.
So both speed and personal learning in there, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, big personal learning. And then the other side is the whole knowledge work side. So that's very practical sense, dealing with documentation, document review. So there's a couple of things. I mean, we've all heard of hallucinations. I don't rely on AI for its knowledge. I always give it the context to work with, and try and focus and use the tools when they're strongest. So language models, great at language, newsflash, but it's not using it for its knowledge that it can't make up an answer, actually giving it all of the context to work with. So documentation stuff. I have it help me review contracts as well. Obviously read everything myself and do everything in terms of quality checking every word on before anything goes out the door. But in terms of review, it's just incredible productivity multiplier as a solo. Those terms and conditions, 50 pages of terms and conditions, being able to ask it what the key points, how can I cap my liability? How can where are the indemnity gotchas that I need to make sure I can review properly? Those two areas would be for me the most powerful. And back to you, is that similar for yourself, Mike or Romesh?
I'll let Romesh go first. Go on, Romesh.
Yeah. Gosh. Well, I mean, my knowledge is nowhere near compared to you guys, but yeah, I'm using it more and more, and I'm constantly amazed at what it can do. The possibilities are huge. But what I've found is you have to use it effectively. Alex, your example of that 50-page legal document you want it to review, brilliant. That's such a good example, right? It'll save you a lot of time. But I think it's actually testing what it's saying as well, and kind of challenging it a little bit at times too. I recently did something with AI, and it gave me the answer I wanted. But I had a little bit of a spidey sense tingling in the background, and I thought, this is the perfect answer. Great, I can use that, file it, great. But actually, I'm not sure. I'm going to ask it the same question from a different perspective. And it was really interesting because it actually gave me a completely different answer, and it led to the same conclusion, but via a much more detailed path. And that was the right path. It was the right path. Had I gone through the first original route, which was the easy route, the result wouldn't have been so good. So I do think you have to be careful, and you can get lazy. I think that's the risk with it in some ways. You can kind of go, oh well, I've got an expectation of what the result is. Bang, bang, bang. Oh, it's telling me what I want to hear. Great, job done. But actually, you've got to use your nous and experience, I think, to make the best of it and to challenge it. Does that resonate with you guys? Is that?
Yeah, the reason I asked my question to Alex about productivity versus personal learning, and I think the best use cases I've seen and the best examples I've seen from people I've talked to is when they properly use it as a learning experience, not when they use it as an answer generator.
Yeah.
And I think that is, there's a lot of narrative around at the moment about AI slop and things like that. And I think that sums up how people are using it at the minute as the answer. It's very easy to create a cheat sheet. Ask a question, it'll give you the answer. The question is not that. The question is how you interact with that answer and how you're going to use that to inform what you do with it and how you learn from that exercise. And that's the bit that I think people, more experienced application developers, more experienced founders, consultants who are using it in that way are the ones who are seeing the bigger benefits.
One of my clients is really front foot with AI, They're really deploying. It's an SME business. They're really getting the team. It's not really a tech business, right? But they're really holding the team accountable across the whole business, and the team have to report back. What have you used AI for? What has it done for you? And now they're getting to the point of the so what.
Yeah.
Right. So AI can generate a lot of content, a lot of results, a lot of it can do a lot of things for you. But what does it mean? What are you using that for? Right. So I think they're now at that stage where, okay, people are using it, they're doing stuff with it, we're holding them to account, and we encourage them in a really positive way. And I think that's a really great path forwards for them. But what does it mean? What are we going to do about it? Because it can save time in the simplest examples, but then it's what you do with the results that it's producing. I think that the value comes in. Alex, what do you think? Is that something that you believe as well?
I think that we're definitely in like a transition phase right now, and the jobs issue, I think, is very, very important, and we have to kind of understand and think carefully about how the changes are going to affect people. I think when it comes to software engineering use cases, if I have 10 employees, all software engineers, and then suddenly there's a tool that makes them 10 times more productive, I'm not going to be laying them off. We're going to be making 10 times more stuff. So I think there's definitely that side to things where, okay, if they're using the tools, people are more effective. Actually, let's do more. I don't want to cut the cloth and end up hitting the same level with fewer people. I don't think that's going to happen at all. But then on the flip side, I think that there are a lot of jobs in sort of knowledge work where, yeah, if you're creating slides in endless meetings, looking at the meeting minutes, and then generating emails, there's this whole area of knowledge work where I think, okay, if you're using AI to just create that 10%, create all that same stuff 10% quicker or 20% quicker, I don't feel like that's really the revolutionary productivity improvement that we kind of expect. So there is going to be a big challenge where, yeah, we realize, Romesh, you said it earlier, what does it really mean? How is it going to be effective? And I think there's a huge amount of knowledge work actually is not that effective anyway. Mm-hmm. And there's too many meetings everywhere. Maybe the audience can identify with that. In terms of certainly in my corporation experience. And so I think, yeah, that's going to be a real challenge as the tools get adopted more and more.
Yeah, it's interesting. Right, what next for you, for Airside Labs, and Alex? Where are you going next? And Matt, and your podcast as well. What's the plan?
Oh yeah, well the podcast. So I started a podcast in January this year called the Travel Tech Podcast, and that focuses on founders and leaders and innovators in sort of the intersection between travel, which is where I've spent most of my career, AI, and particular. I have a passion for aviation, so if I can get aviation in there, then I'll try and get flying and something aviation in there. But we do talk about AI in combination with those things, and that's going really well, and been growing that. And it's been a fantastic experience as a new project for me as a solo. So I would say there's a lesson there, perhaps I could share for people, is that getting yourself out there and talking about the industry, talking about the problems, and publishing your work and discussing things in the open is not something I'd done before this podcast, really. And so and it's been very, very positive with customers and clients coming to me and the feedback loop has been very powerful there. And then at Airside Labs, I'm sort of building AI systems for a range of customers across aviation. Very, very exciting and hard work. And yeah, as we alluded to earlier in this discussion, not starting from scratch in terms of trust, but yeah, on that journey of being tested and working as hard as possible to try and to deliver that and build it up from nothing into something that hopefully very enduring and very big in the future.
Really good. Thanks, Alex. Romesh, anything you'd like to add to this discussion?
Well, I just want to say a massive thank you to Alex for joining us. We've covered some brilliant areas, I think, that are very relevant to entrepreneurs, to business leaders at the moment. I loved your thoughts and insights on building trust and credibility, key foundations to your success. And you've had a fantastic journey, Alex. The stuff we've discussed about AI and how to use it more effectively and how things might develop is also, I wish we had more time. And to have someone like you who's done lots of podcasting and to get your involvement with us is brilliant. So really big thank you, and stay in touch.
Yeah, thank you so much, Romesh and Mike. I think you've got a fantastic podcast. It's wonderful to be invited onto Strive and Thrive. And I was aware of you guys before, so I just wanted to say when I got that message that you were interested in perhaps me coming and joining you to record a conversation, that was a really welcome email. That was a lovely moment to receive that. So thank you so much, guys. It's been fantastic.
Thanks, Alex. Thank you, everyone, for listening or watching Strive and Thrive, and we hope you've enjoyed today's discussion. We're a podcast for entrepreneurs, founders, and business leaders. So please like, follow, and subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Strive and Thrive.